Hi, my rays of light. Welcome back to my channel. This is Psychic Medium Raymond Guzman, and today I'm going to be doing a psychic slash mediumship reading on Chris Benoit. I hope I pronounced his name right. He is a WWE wrestler or professional wrestler, and he was Canadian. And a lot of people have wondered or speculated whether or not he actually died by suicide, and in the process before committing suicide, did he really um, murder his wife and his son? And that's the backstory. So we know that he's a wrestler. We know what was put out into the media about this being a suicide and a murder suicide. So I'm here to give you exactly what I get from his soul, from my spirit guides, and just the intuitive part also of what I'm getting from him. So I will say that he was someone that had a very difficult life. There's people that reach a certain level of fame and they're happy. But with him, I don't feel like he was happy at all. I don't get any kind of happiness from his soul at all. I do feel like there was a lot of issues that he would have been holding on to for quite some time. So it wasn't something that was just, recent, before he passed. It would have been something, a lot of issues with people, disagreements. To be more specific, I'm going to say in his career, there was a lot of bridges that he would have burned, people that he would have pissed off and not been happy working with them, and just some lies and manipulation on his part. And for that, he is sorry, because I keep hearing his soul saying that he is sorry for that. And it's something that he's definitely not proud of, that part of it. But he does feel kind of justified as to, a lot of the way that he treated certain men and, certain guys in the industry. He was saying they were just jackasses, and excuse my language, but that's exactly how he's putting it out there. I do feel like there was a lot of jealousy from other wrestlers as well against him. So this wasn't just Chris, kind of coming to conclusions or exaggerating. He really did go through a lot of crap, dealing with a lot of these guys that were super jealous of him or thought they were better wrestlers, or rumors that were being circulated. I also get that he would have been someone that would not have necessarily been faithful in his relationship with any women that he would have been in, including his partner, right before this whole thing happened. So again, there would have been some eyes on other women, and I feel like his wife, she would have also not been happy either. There wouldn't have been, again, this marriage would not have been the ideal marriage and partnership. It was very unbalanced, and I just get arguments, and I get that he could have been physically abusive to her as well. So a lot of rage, and the rage would be stemming from a lot of the abuse of steroids and other drugs that he would have been using and putting into his body. Um, so he was fighting a lot of things, but the main thing that he was really fighting was his the mental battle and the mental side of himself. Now, I'm not saying that he was mental crazy, like schizophrenic, but maybe like bipolar. Again, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so I'm not going to sit here and diagnose anyone or put a label, but that is what I get from him, that he would be holding on to in his in his life. And I don't feel like he would have opened up to people because he felt judged already. And I feel like, again, he pissed off a lot of people in the WWE, for the company that he worked for. And so, again, it was not a good situation. And it's like everything that he touched, yes, he did have some success to it, but it was like, at the same time, everything that he would have touched or everything he would have encountered would have led to it, being turned upside down and eventually being destroyed. It was like the people that got closer to Chris always suffered from his moods, and I feel like he was kind of pessimistic as well. But he did, I'm not trying to paint him as a bad guy, because I certainly don't feel like he was a bad guy. I feel like he was crying out for help in many ways, but he just didn't get that help. But again, everything seems to be very opposite in his life, meaning that he never really was happy in anything. I do feel like he had a lot of health problems, and this would be resulting from the drugs and the the steroid use, and also a lot of the physical sport of what he did, which is the wrestling portion of it. But what I'm seeing here is a lot of infidelity and a lot of pain and heartbreak in this relationship that he would have been in, and also previous relationships. So there was a female that would have not been his wife or partner at the time of his passing that would have been hurt. Maybe he had an affair with her years prior, a couple years before, or met her through work. But there was definitely some other female, from what Spirit is telling me, from what I'm getting from his soul. And these are regrets and things that he never really, really got to apologize for, I feel, and just things that he was dealing with. And so, again, there would have been a third party relationship, and all of this would have caused him to really kind of re-examine his life. I do feel mentally, well, what came out, again, I'm going to say what came out on the media, and what was released is that they did a toxicology report. They found substances, but nothing leading to roid, that's a tongue twister, steroid rage. And I'm just going to say it like that, but they call it roid rage. But I don't feel like he had that either. And when it comes to the wife and son, they also had some drugs in their system as well. The son was sedated, supposedly. So this was all carried out. But here is what I am getting from this. I think a lot of people want to know, was this a murder that he did? And did he just snap? Because people do snap. There are people that are suicidal, and or that are schizophrenic, or people that just are dark souls and they snap. I don't get that from Chris. I don't get that he would have snapped, and I don't get that he would have murdered his own flesh and blood, his son and his wife, even if they weren't, the best. And again, I do feel like he could have been abusive in some way, maybe not physical, it could have been verbal, or both. I'm picking up both, but maybe she didn't report it to the police, or, threats that were made were not given. But what I will say is that I do feel that there was foul play, definitely, and things can be twisted and covered up to be staged and look like a murder-suicide. But I don't feel like he would have done this. I do feel like also he would have been very jealous of the wife at the same time. It's almost like that mentality when, you cheat on someone, you cheat on your wife, but you don't want her cheating on you or looking at other men. So there was a lot of control and possessiveness to him. But I don't feel and don't see that he would be that type of person that would have committed that suicide, that murder and the suicide. And so the question here would be, well, who's responsible for it? Well, I can tell you that he had a lot of enemies, and that's what I will say. For my safety, since again, some of these people are still living, I can only say is that there were people that he would have known. It would have been a man, at least his age, and a group of other people. So they were kind of all in all of this, if you know what I mean. And again, we have to go back and look at his career, the accomplishments. And I feel, again, a lot of the enemies that he would have created would have been from the company that he was in. Interestingly enough, after his passing, it was like WWE. I'm not a big sports fanatic or anything, but they try to erase a lot of his, his mentions of his name and etc. So again, you would have to ask yourself, why would, were they embarrassed that he committed suicide, according to, what was put out in the media and what was paid to be put out in the media? Or, is there some certainty to what a lot of fans and people that really loved Chris really think happened, which would have been that this was a murder. He was murdered, and it was all, and his kid, his child, and his wife were murdered too, and this was all made to look and staged to look like a murder suicide, or yeah, murder suicide. So again, I can only give you what I see here and what I'm getting. I don't feel like his soul is at peace, and he is trying to have a lot of this, have justice. But I don't feel like they're going to reopen the case at all. But because it's an open and closed case, the medical examiner is going to say what they want to say. They're paid off, whatever's put in the media. But I do feel like justice is being served from the spiritual side. And I think this is something as a medium that a lot of people don't understand listening to this, that souls that are on the other side, that, have crossed over and that have been victimized of murders or shootings or stabbings in very violent manner, they can take vengeance on their own hand once another soul crosses over. Or they can, come back to the earthly realm and cause havoc. You could call this a haunting for those people that have done this. So I do feel like the people that are responsible for this are definitely plagued by nightmares and are getting their justice. It's a karmic justice, because it's not just karmic justice, but I feel like he came back from spirit world to kind of seek some justice himself. And again, this is kind of hard to really understand, but just picture it this way. If a person, was killed by someone else, and years later that other person that killed them dies, that soul will be waiting for them on the other side. And so this is something, this is not, of course, every single case or every single scenario for murder victims or murder victims or stabbings or stuff like that are very violent, but in some cases that is the case. And in this case, I feel exactly like this is what his soul was never at rest, and so he's been waiting for them. And again, regardless of what they said that his brain looked like, it was when they did an autopsy, I believe, of his brain, or they examined his brain, they concluded that he had the signs of very damaged brain, and it was like of a brain of an 85-year-old with Alzheimer's. So he could have contributed to his, him committing the murders, or and committing suicide. But again, I don't feel that is the truth at all. That's not the truth at all. But what Spirit is coming forth and saying is that there was definitely some bridges that he had burned, and coming out of all of this defeated. And I feel like he was they wanted to silence him in many ways and get him out of the picture, because in some ways, I don't feel like he would have, even though he burned some bridges and he had enemies, he was never going to fully leave WWE. He was always going to be known, and I feel like he was always going to have some kind of role or place. Even though he would have said, he stepped out of that limelight, he would have always had a guest appearance or kind of been pulled back. I just feel like there would have been some more work around the wrestling world, whether it's training someone to be a wrestler, but there would have been a lot of work and a lot of that, going on as a future events for him. So again, I feel like his career was far from over. And he had a lot more to actually accomplish. But again, I do feel like this was all a murder and covered up, and it's very foul. And like I said, he would have had some threats. I feel like there was definitely some threats. And I do feel like, for, in a sense, that his family and friends, people that were really his friends, they have felt unsettled about this, because I don't feel like this is Chris that the people and the fans loved and knew, and there was other issues going on within his mind. But I don't feel, you also have to ask yourself, if a person has, the way that they are arranged, they had positioned an 85-year-old type of Alzheimer's, etc. Some Alzheimer's patients can be violent, but in some cases they really don't know where they're at, or they really don't know, their surroundings, or they don't really process a lot of information anymore. So again, I don't feel like he would have had that. So again, a lot of things that were put out there, as medical examiner or reports that have been put out at autopsy, etc. Those findings, I feel like there's a lot of inaccuracy in all of this. So again, because you have to consider there's a lot of people that are wrestlers and that have had more, damage to their head or a lot of hits, and a lot of their body has been physically abused, doing and playing the sport, but have never really, you don't hear of them, murdering their own family and then committing suicide on themselves. So again, I feel like there's a lot of inaccuracy and just a lot that is not being said and a lot that was covered up. And, for his fans, he wants them to know that he didn't kill himself. So again, this is something again that people, may not believe it. They may, think that he really did suffer from a mental illness and did commit suicide and he killed his family. But again, I can only give you what I'm getting from his soul, what I'm getting from spirit. And so, yeah. And like I said, he was definitely misunderstood by a lot of people, but so loved by a lot of people as well. And his memory will always live on, and he'll always be known as the greatest legend, one of the greatest in the wrestling world. So, big angel hugs to all of you that have requested this video. I hope you found it, that it did, give out maybe some of you that were listening, it did match up or align with your own thoughts and your own feelings, intuitive feelings that you have had about Chris Benoit. And again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to my channel on a daily basis. If you'd like to book a private psychic reading with me, you can visit my website. It's www.raymondguzman.net/shop. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Psychic Medium Ray. Blessings and love and light. Have an amazing, amazing night.